Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the fourth in a series of videos that I've been presenting under the rubric of the journey of the five hearts. If you are interested in getting a brief overview of that journey of all the five hearts, please feel free to go back and look at my first video. And then in the next two videos that I presented a phenomenon that I've seen both in myself and in my clients, this very, very insidious acquisition of distorted core beliefs that come into our psyche, and then we become identified with those core beliefs and we reenact them. So in the last two videos I talked about that phenomenon, and then I shared a lot about what are the steps to break out of that. Today, the fourth video, I'd love to talk about a theme that's near and dear to my heart. The theme is codependency. And that theme is, I'm very heartened to hear, is something that more and more we're becoming conscious of. I'm hearing it from my clients, I'm hearing it in social media, I'm hearing it all around, people saying, am I being codependent? I want to be out of codependency. So it's very heartening to me to hear that, because it is a very self-destructive and destructive to our relationships. Codependency really occurs mostly in relationships, in relationship to others. Let me talk to you a little bit about what that is, how it begins. This phenomenon, like the phenomenon of the spell of unworthiness in the reenactment process, begins with the broken heart. As you know, we have this beautiful original heart. It gets crushed, it gets broken. And when that happens, we lose a sense of that core self of who we are. We lose that sense of our original heart. And we go into survival mode. We shut down, we protect ourselves. We also begin this process of slowly becoming more and more dependent on others for our sense of self, for our sense of well-being. Now, of course, it's normal and typical for us to want to get recognition from others, but this phenomenon is an over-need, an over-dependency for the recognition of others. So we start learning to identify ourselves based on how do others see us. Do they think we're okay? And in that process, codependency is born. We begin slowly, in many cases, losing our sense of self. And so what does that look like in relationship? So one example of codependency that comes to mind is a couple that recently came in, and the woman in the couple was very artistic and had a really passion for drawing and painting and writing, and as their relationship grew and they had young children, she began to feel like there just wasn't time for that. She had to spend time with the kids, and so she was spending a lot of time with the kids. Meanwhile, her husband, who was an avid hunter and fisherman and outdoorsman, would continue to do his activities outside of the house and on weekends, and was gone for extended periods of time. And what began, as you can imagine, grew was an increasing sense of resentment on her part that she had to give up things that she loved and he was continuing to do his. And so there's an example of someone who obviously, is a very giving and selfless person, but who on some level became codependent because she wasn't listening to what was calling out for her, her need to live out this gift inside. And yes, she's a mother and loves her kids, but she was disappearing in this relationship and not inserting herself enough with her partner, who wasn't opposed to trying to help out, but just was going off and doing his thing and maybe a little oblivious to what was happening. But the codependency lies really kind of in both their ends, but primarily on her end, in not saying, look, I want to make time for this. This has got to make room. I don't know where it's going to fit in, but we need to figure out how that's going to happen and insist on that and assert herself. And that's a perfect example of her breaking out of that codependency. And the husband needs to also begin to recognize that he's got these passions, and it's very important for him to live those out. But he's in a context now where he needs to also be attentive to these other needs and figure out a way that makes it a win-win. Very often, we will do what we think others expect of us, those who are important to us. We will make decisions out of guilt or duty because that's what others want us to do. We will people please. We will not want to be an inconvenience or burden to anybody. We will disappear in our needs. So that's one common way that codependency shows up. It looks on some level very generous and very positive, but in the end it really isn't positive. It's not positive for you because you don't exist. There's no you in the equation with the relationship. It also doesn't work for relationships. I've seen so many relationships where the other, who is the recipient of someone who's non-existent in that way, will begin to get frustrated and shut down and lose any desire to be with that person because they're needing to feel somebody next, a self with them. So that's one way that codependency can kind of show up. Another way that codependency can show up is seemingly the opposite, which is that I am so focused on having the others fix me and make me feel okay. So if I get anxious because someone is speaking too loud or doing something that makes me feel uncomfortable, I want to change their behavior in order to fix what I feel like. So there's this controlling side of me. I want to overpower the other one. I will blame them. I will criticize them. I will cajole them to change their behavior so that I feel better inside. And again, that's dangerous because, first of all, I have very little control over someone else's behavior in the long term. I may be in the immediate have some capacity to change their behavior, but in the long term it doesn't work. So especially in a long-term relationship, looking and waiting to change that other person's behavior that I find irritating or annoying without really taking responsibility for what comes up for me, the feelings that go on for me in the process of that behavior, is codependency and very destructive because I end up getting more and more frustrated, more annoyed. They end up feeling, they disappear, they end up going into their little dance, and so ultimately it doesn't work out. When I say this, it's not that I'm suggesting that in the first case where I disappeared, that we don't take into account other people's needs. That's certainly important. What happens in codependency is that I completely turn over my sense of what's right to the other. I not only take into account, but I let them decide. What do you want to do, dear? Doesn't matter to me. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do. It's that losing of the self that becomes really difficult. And at the same time, in that codependency where there's controlling behavior, it's fine to exist and assert yourself in certain points and say, look, could you change that behavior? But if there's this constant looking to the other to change their behavior so that I don't feel anxious, so that I don't feel annoyed, so that I don't feel, that's a losing battle, and that's codependency. So it is very heartening for me to hear that many now are interested in breaking out of codependency and moving into what I call co-creativity. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to know more about codependency, click on to my website down below. I have listed a number of different examples of how codependency shows up, so that could be very helpful. In the next video, I'm going to be talking more about the steps to break out of codependency and to begin to explore what it can be like to be out of codependency and in co-creativity in a relationship, which is very exciting. So if you haven't already, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next video.